Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to me, your host, Christian Watson. I hope you guys are doing well. Excuse my voice, my friends. I have came under the weather recently, but there is important work to be done, and we have to keep going, so we're going to keep going. My friends, there is a sickly perversion going throughout American society right now, and many of you probably have a picture in your head of what that is, depending on what you don't like, whatever captures your distaste. But this perversion is actually quite evident and it's quite powerful, and that is the perverse relationship between academia and the media. And has never been in my lifetime more evident than it is right now in the current conversation surrounding what is termed Christian nationalism. Now, throughout the Trump era, and even a little bit after the Trump era, the term Christian nationalism was used by social theorists and sociologists and people who basically cook up all these random ideas about how people think by trying to measure things by their perspective, even though sociology seems to deny the fact that the human being is fundamentally dynamic. And inconsistency is a key feature of many people's perspectives. As they grow and take more information in, many people have the tendency to change. But let's forget all of that. These social scientists, these wizards, have cooked up all these ideas about what basically made Trump win. And one of the many ideas that they have managed to latch onto was Christian nationalism. Now, the idea of Christian nationalism, which I'll start to define in a second, does not come from the Trump era. It's been talked about in many different ways, all the way back to the 90s and probably even back before then. But the term Christian nationalism has come in vogue, has become more popular more recently. The Associated Press just published a story about the victory of Doug Mastriano, who is a gubernatorial candidate in Pennsylvania, saying that the rise of Christian nationalism is happening. ABC also published a story. And also, on The View, Tara Setmayer, contributor to The View, who when I was much younger, I'm still young, when I was much younger, like 5 or so years ago, I remember seeing Tara Setmayer as a Republican on CNN, but apparently now anyway, we'll talk about that later. She had a few words to say about Christian nationalism. So apparently the cause for the mass shootings that have happened, particularly Buffalo and Uvalde, all of that has to do with Christian nationalism. And of course, her co-host went on to offer more, brain dead ideas about what that means by attacking Southern tropes of guns, gods, and country as if that's Christian nationalism. But of course, my friends, this brings us into a broader idea, because Christendom has been shaken by these allegations and this rhetoric. And really, I believe the public's understanding of the truth of this matter has also been shaken. And this is not simply a matter of Christendom. This is a matter of anyone who wants to understand the nature of this concept. The truth is, my friends, Christian nationalism is nothing short of a slur in this context. And even as an academic study, Christian nationalism is not a consistent or coherent concept. And yet it is being taken for granted and used by many influential people in society as a method of analysis to understand certain social phenomenon, and that is deadly to our understanding of the world. So how do I draw this assumption? Well, in the Associated Press article, which you can see on your screen right here, they cited, amongst many other things, many other examples of Christian nationalism, they cited a scholarly book written a few years ago, as of the posting of this video, by one Andrew L. Whitehead and Samuel L. Perry, called Taking America Back for God, Christian Nationalism in the United States, where these two use the term Christian nationalism, which they claim had not really been used in a work of this magnitude before, and they use it to examine several empirical claims to see the scope of Christian nationalism in America. And so I thought to myself, since this is they claim it's the most comprehensive work to date on Christian nationalism, it would behoove me to go ahead and read what these two gentlemen define as Christian nationalism. And they offer a series of definitions. They offer two, actually. One in the beginning of the book and the other as they're going on and explain their methodology. And I'll read both of them to you. So in the preface, they define Christian nationalism as this. They say, we mean Christian nationalism to describe an ideology that idealizes and advocates a fusion of American civic life with a particular type of Christian identity and culture. We use Christian here in a specific sense. We are not referring to doctrinal orthodoxy or personal piety. In fact, we find some Christian nationalists can be quite secular. Rather, the explicit ideological content of Christian nationalism comprises beliefs about historical identity, cultural preeminence, and political influence. But just as important, it also contains ideological content that is often implicit. This includes symbols, boundaries that include conceptually blur lines and conflate religion identity, Christian, preferably Protestant, in race, white, nativity, and so on and so forth. This is the first definition. So Christian nationalism for these guys is not a single idea. It's rather a constellation of ideas, some of which go towards politics, some of which go towards nativism, some of which go towards race. Now, they expand upon this a little bit more in the second definition. And they say the following here. They say, simply put, Christian nationalism is a cultural framework, a collection of myths, traditions, symbols, narratives, and value systems that idealizes and advocates a fusion of Christianity with American civic life. But the Christianity of Christian nationalists is of a particular sort. We do not mean Christianity here as a general meta-category, including all expressions of Orthodox Christian theology, nor will we use such terms as evangelism or white conservative Protestantism, to the extent that these represent certain theological interpretive positions, as synonyms for Christian nationalism. On the contrary, the Christianity of Christian nationalism represents something more than religion. As we will show, it includes assumptions of nativism, white supremacy, patriarchy, and heteronormativity, along with divine sanction for authoritarian control and militarism. Now, my friends, if you were confused by that definition or those two definitions I just read out to you, I don't blame you. Not only is my voice hoarse, but also the definitions themselves make no sense. So that fact does not help by my voice, excuse me. But this is the core point, my friends. You don't have, it's almost impossible. Actually, it is impossible to have a coherent ideology that does not have a foundational ethos. The key question that arises from both of these definitions is what constitutes a Christian nationalist when the views of Christian nationalism have so much overlap, or in some of the views have so much overlap with different ideas. Indeed, as these two gentlemen said, that they're not going to be addressing white Protestant evangelicals. Why would they even mention that? Because some of the beliefs of Protestant evangelicals, I'm not going to use the word white because that's a completely nonsense term that does not relate, someone's skin color does not relate to their beliefs. That's just nonsense. But inherently does not. But especially their spiritual beliefs. But evangelical Protestantism may share some foundational beliefs about the nation of America that Christian nationalism may have, in the sense that evangelical Protestantism, in many cases, does affirm that America is foundationally Christian. These two gentlemen, in their book, quote Pastor Robert Jeffress, who was one of Trump's spiritual advisors on his evangelical council, who has said that that America itself was foundational and the founders had a preference to Christianity. Now, whether you agree with Jeffress' theory or not, personally, I take issue with it, even though I am a Christian myself, but that's besides the point. Whether you agree with his theory or not, these two gentlemen try to loop him in to the Christian nationalist crowd by saying that he has Christian nationalist views by believing that America is foundationally Christian. So what's the difference between an evangelical that believes America is foundationally Christian and a Christian nationalist that believes the same thing? Well, according to these two, Christian nationalists can be secular, and while an evangelical may profess the doctrine, Christian nationalists don't necessarily do that. We're getting into more issues here. Also, what's the difference, when asked, between Christian nationalism and theocracy? Well, these two gentlemen pose two things. Number one, theocracy would rather have like a priest or a clergy member in office, but rather Christian nationalism, in contrast, will want to have a secular person because they don't necessarily care about having a religious leader in office. Interesting, isn't it? Very weird. And the second distinction between theocracy and Christian nationalism, according to these two, according to Andrew and according to Samuel, is that theocrats believe laws should be inspired by the divine, whereas Christian nationalists don't mind secular governance. So what exactly makes Christian nationalism Christian? These are the philosophical questions you got to answer to get to the bottom of these things. The truth is, it's not. And these two admit that. They admit that this is not Christian in the essential sense, that it's orthodoxy and it's praising Jesus, but rather it's Christian in the symbolic sense. But I would argue that using the word Christian as a proxy for symbolism and images is a desolation of that term. It is a misuse of that term. As these two, who have done the most comprehensive study of Christian nationalism currently in academia right now, have defined it, Christian nationalism is utter nonsense. They are using the word of Christianity and the name of Christianity to describe a phenomenon that is only not Christian in essence. It's not even Christian in practice. It's not even Christian in image. It's not Christian at all. It's solely a matter of aesthetics. But let's say we were to take this idea seriously. There's several problems with this kind of definition. As I mentioned before, this idea of Christian nationalism has no foundational ethos. And an idea that does not have a foundational ethos has no line of demarcation. Therefore, anything and everything you want that idea to represent, it can represent. Which is why when they mention patriarchy and white supremacy and heteronormativity, you naturally ask yourself, what does this have to do with a spiritual ideology? But the truth is, if there's no ethos, no clear idea of what this ideology is, they can loop whatever ideology they want to into this vessel, into this linguistic term. The truth is, my friends, Christian nationalism is an all-purpose tool which has a similar function as that of the syllogism, but with less structure and less utility, by which you can put anything into that tool and you can try to pump out anything you want to, as long as those things adhere to the principles of that tool. So, for example, with the syllogism, if I say all dogs are white, Jack is a dog, therefore Jack is white, that is a perfectly logical statement which coheres to the syllogism, but it is factually incorrect, and in the laws of logic, we would say that it is unsound. But the syllogism can make anything make sense within its parameters. Similarly, Christian nationalism can make decidedly non-Christian ideas, which have no relation to each other, make sense because it has defined them within this confined world created and cooked up by sociologists. This is conceptual distortion. This is manipulation at the highest degree. And yet these two used these definitions to inform an empirical study. And empirics, as we understand, is meant to observe the natural world by which is governed by objective truth. And yet these two, in their analysis, eschew objective truth. They don't even define a coherent ideology, which must have an ethos, and they don't even satisfy the essential Christian nature of this ideology, which would be assumed by hearing the name Christian nationalism. And I'll even give you one more. These two also say in the book, they don't even mean nationalism. They mean nationism. They mean politically conservative, identity-based Christianity when they refer to nationalism. They don't actually mean the term nationalism. So not only is Christian nationalism not Christian in essence or definition, or even a little bit, it's also not nationalistic. So you have a deceptive term being touted around by media darlings because a few academics managed to cook it up in their laboratories of untruth. We have more problems with ideas like this. So Christian nationalism imposes upon people who may have otherwise legitimate beliefs, even if the beliefs are wrong, a mark of radicalism. It says people who share this kind of belief that America is foundationally Christian are radical, and they're representative of this kind of broader, evil, vicious ideology, which makes it easier for people like Tara Setmayer in The View and her compatriots in The View to write off people whom they disagree with. Once again, this is a product of an insincere, incorrect, philosophically dead idea, which has been cooked together by people who seemingly have no adherence to the truth. And so by lacking internal consistency, because again, my critiques flow from this one thing, there's no internally consistent definition of what Christian nationalism is. By lacking internal consistency, it allows Christian nationalism to be this all-purpose tool by which anything can make sense so long as it's defined within this subjectivist parameters. So what's the point? My friends, not only is Christian nationalism a slur, as a term, as a definition, it makes no sense. Not only because it's not Christian, we've established that, but because in this definition, it's not even referring to Christian orthodoxy or the divinity of Christ, it's referring rather to images and symbology. And not only is it not nationalistic, it's referring to a certain strain of what these people call conservatism, which again, I would push back on. So not only is this term deceitful, not only is it not Christian, it is being used to slander people who have ideas that are worth engaging, or may not be worth engaging, but you never know that if you use this definition, and to cast them off. And what happens when this happens? What happens is we don't engage with the truth, and we engage with a caricature of our ideological foes or our potential ideological allies, and we don't understand the nature of things. And a person who does not understand the nature of things is someone who is woefully ignorant. And the woefully ignorant, my friends, do not have the ability in their ignorance to go beyond that, to progress, to be the natural, flourishing, dynamic human beings that we're meant to be. Man only ascended from the caves to the stars because he understood one thing. He understood how to apply his faculty of reason to the natural world, to not only adapt to it, but then master it and convert it into his fortress. But the moment man forgets the principle of dynamism and growth and applying reason in a good way, is the moment man puts himself in a primitive position. Don't be primitive. Reject the idea of Christian nationalism for the academic, artificial nonsense that it is, because it has no basis in reality, and not only that, it is a pure fiction, a sophism created by ideologically motivated academics. Think on it. My friends, love you guys so much. If you love me, please go to my Patreon, patreon.com/BillCWatson, or PayPal, officialcwatson@gmail.com, or please go to my Discord, which is in the comment section down below. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel, share this video, comment on this video. My friends, love you guys so much, and please stay offensive. Bye, guys.